Welcome to Open House. One of the greatest honors of my life is getting to support the city's most exceptional realtors, and among them is Tracey Henkels. I've had the privilege of working alongside Tracey for over 15 years at Living Room Realty. She's thoughtful, experienced, and strategic, and she consistently leads with integrity. Today's Open House conversation is with Tracey, and we're diving into a topic that recently lit up our office group chat: escalation clauses. Someone asked, "What do people think about them?" And the replies came fast, passionate, opinionated, thoughtful. I've long been in the not a fan camp, but hearing Tracey's perspective helped me see something more clearly. Whether I like escalation clauses or don't like them, that's not really the question. What matters is what's going to benefit the client the most. Our role is to empower them with clear information, thoughtful options, and a strategy that supports their goals, not our preferences. And just as importantly, how does the other party feel about escalation clauses? What's going to lead to the highest chance of a successful, ethical outcome for everyone involved? Escalation clauses aren't inherently good or bad. They're just a tool. And when used with care, curiosity, and clear communication, they can play a helpful role in a multiple offer market. That's the kind of clarity Tracey brings to this conversation, and why I'm so grateful she's here to share her approach with us today. Tracey, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that was such a great meeting to hear all the opinions flying back and forth. And I thought, to me, you had kind of the mic drop statement about them being, understanding how the parties are going to work with them, how they feel about them. But first, let's just make sure to briefly explain to our listeners what an escalation clause is and what, in your opinion, it does and doesn't do.
So an escalation clause actually is a really simple tool, in my humble opinion. I think a lot of agents think they're like a little bit afraid of them. If they get multiple escalation clauses, what do I do? But in general, it's a tool for the buyer to feel more comfortable in what they're offering and knowing that they're not paying way more than the next highest offer, which from their perspective is going to, I think, and I've seen this time and time again, keep a transaction in escrow and get it to closing. I think a lot of times I've seen people go for it with a highest and best situation, and then they fizzle out. They're just like, what did we just do? And no matter how much the agent tries to assure them, they don't know what the other offer is. So it's just kind of a peace of mind tool that I've used my entire career, and I think it's very good for both parties, honestly, because the idea is that we can bring a deal to closing. If you get an offer for this obscene amount of money and it doesn't get to closing and then you have to go back on the market, that's not a position I think any seller would want to be in.
So it really is something that you found in your practice that really helps prevent buyer's remorse from that, we don't know. There's no way to measure or gauge where that offer was that was underneath them.
Yeah. And for the seller, I think it gives them an opportunity to not have a fail sale over having somebody really go for it. And I'm not saying people buyers don't go for it and they will close, but there's a pretty high percentage that I've seen of transactions when people really do go high and sellers are like, sweet, we just got the best price ever and we're so excited. Thank you, agent. But if it doesn't get to to closing, it's then a disappointment. So I feel like it's kind of a happy medium to explain to both parties, both as a listing agent and a buyer's agent, and let the clients choose what they want to do.
And so that brings up, that kind of segues into what is your conversation then when you sit down with a buyer about using an escalation clause, and then how does that differ from when you're sitting down and talking to your seller about that they may see some escalation clauses?
Yeah. That's a great question. I used to talk to buyers about this tool in a buyer's meeting, and I found it's a little bit overwhelming. So I talk about it as a transaction comes up and the first house that they want to look at, I'll say, okay, we have several tools in our tool belt. We may or may not be able to use all of them. And I'm going to find out what we can use. And this is going to be influenced by how the seller and their agent feel about these tools. And everybody has different opinions. And some people have really strong opinions. So that's one of the things we do is we kind of get the lay of the land with each individual home, seller, listing agent. And then I'm going to let you know what your tools are that make sense.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times it's very easy to find out very quickly how a listing agent feels about it, which is going to influence how they talk to their client about it. And sometimes they'll even put on ARM lists, as we all know, no escalation clauses, highest and best. And, then the rules, and I don't ever challenge those. I don't call an agent and, say, why are you not using this? Try to convince them that I do not think is a great idea, because my job is to represent my client, and I could do that, but I just don't think that's ever probably going to go over very well if somebody puts that in the comments.
Right. And why do you think there are some agents like myself that don't like to use them, or don't commonly, like if they were asked, my gut reaction is always like, no. But of course, I have used them because sometimes it's the right tool for the right circumstance. But why do you think there's some agents that are highest and best only?
I don't know for sure. It doesn't make sense to my brain why you would limit that. But I do think what I've heard is they feel like they get higher offers for their client. I think that's the main thing. But I don't necessarily agree with that. And again, getting a super high offer and not getting to closing is what I've seen, and also caution my sellers against if I'm talking to them about allowing escalation clauses, or if, right now, I used to talk to people about, do they want to allow escalation clauses or not? And not in the situation. It's confusing sometimes for sellers. So what I do now is I tell them, I think we should just allow people to write the type of offer they want to write and use the tools they want to use, and then we'll assess. And that just is so much easier without offers in hand for sellers to wrap their head around. Because if they get one offer, you don't even really need to have a long conversation. And my approach in the past has been as much information up front. And I've found that you have to kind of temper that because it's overwhelming. Yeah. The amount of information that people have to absorb before they get started. And I always love to have clients be prepared, but I think there's a happy medium of a middle ground.
Yeah, and it might not come up if you don't have multiple offers, if it's not the right tool, if someone doesn't allow for them. I think on the face of it, too, for me, is like why my gut reaction is probably coming from being a brokerage owner, like looking at a wider view of the industry than you would as like a really seasoned agent. Is that like, first, if it's a really seasoned agent like yourself and they using escalation clauses, I'm all thumbs up. But just as like, escalation clauses are the way to go, I get really nervous because I see that a lot of agents don't understand that your escalation clause is not something that the seller can sign and accept.
Yep.
It triggers them to have to write a counter offer. And so sometimes in a deal, it's more powerful to get it signed and done, and you leave it open. And I think that most people, I think that's where my resistance comes from, is what I've noticed is that most people don't understand that an escalation clause is like an open conversation. So to me, it's just an ask for a counteroffer. So why not just skip to the counteroffer? But in other circumstances, I've seen how effective they are as being a sort of insurance. And especially like in the case where this came up yesterday as I was talking to an agent, is they were saying, you have those agents, they've got a house on the market, and they tell you, I'm expecting 10 offers. I only have one in my hand. And you're like, okay, so you expect 10, but you have one, and you're telling your agent, like, what are you to do with the buyers? And they may be the only one, but the escalation clause can act as a sort of insurance policy from those other, maybe be it 2 or 10 or 15 that come in behind them, that there will be an open conversation where they have to respond.
I also feel like it makes it less hectic to allow escalation clauses. And I feel like it's more fair for everybody involved instead of doing highest and best and then not giving people an opportunity to amend. And I think giving the opportunity to amend, I've never done that. Like ask for highest and best and then ask for amendments with an update. I find it very stressful. Your clients have to be available. You have to be available at a set time. And I think it just like kind of feeds into the world we live in of like franticness and urgency. And I've really been trying to set business practices where I don't create that and I'm not feeding into the sense of urgency.
And that serves your clients because they
Yes.
don't have time to think and coming. And I think to your point earlier, what are the things that we know lead to buyer's remorse?
Mm-hmm.
Feeling rushed, not having enough time.
Yes.
Going farther than they felt they should have, not knowing where the floor was.
Another thing that I often think helps, even if escalation clauses, is as a listing agent and also as a buyer agent, having that conversation with your client, almost like you're going to pay this price. Like just pretend that this is the price you're going to pay. And are you good with that? Does that feel good? I know it's going to feel like a stretch. Or would you do more? Because if you knew someone else went 5,000 higher, would you have regrets?
Mm-hmm.
And I say, take the night to think about it. We have time. Usually the more time. And that's why I also tell buyers that it's really important we get into the house as soon as we can. Don't wait, because people need time to process if they're really going to offer top dollar for something. They need to noodle on it. They need to talk to their family. Sometimes they want to have a conversation. And it takes, again, away the frantic, urgent nature of real estate, which I don't think is a positive experience for either our industry, people in our industry, or clients. So I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
Yeah, like what actually does drive the best results and is best for us? Frenzy, probably not the answer.
Mm-hmm.
How do you set the tone in early conversations with an agent to uncover how they feel about escalation clauses?
So I usually wait until the client tells me they want to write an offer. And I'll usually, if I know the agent, I'll text them sometimes just because it's easier and quicker. But if I don't know the agent, I usually take the time to call. And I do think that people are afraid that they're going to bug listing agents. And I think that is crazy.
It's our job.
Yeah. And I think I have a really hard time when agents, you call them and you text them and say, hey, can you give me a call? And then they don't want to talk on the phone. I have a really hard time with that. It's really fraught for lack of communication and misunderstanding. So, and I'm also surprised when I'm a listing agent and I just get an offer emailed over to me. I really do think that we need to start taking the time to call each other more and talk through things. And this is one of the, get a tone for what the seller wants in a conversation, not just a text, and ask about how they feel about escalation clauses. And, you can get a sense of even the agent's negotiating style by talking to them on the phone. You can't get that sense in a text.
Absolutely.
Unless you know them.
There were some pros and cons that were talked about in our office. Like, do you think escalation clauses are being used to drive up prices?
I don't know. I don't know if I have an opinion about that. I think sometimes it does. I could tell you a really good example, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, an agent I work with all the time. And I know she does not allow escalation clauses. And she also does not write escalation clauses. She didn't even ask me. Her clients went like 40,000 over the next highest offer. And I just thought, what a disservice to this buyer that she didn't even ask the question. And she is a really good agent.
Yeah.
Like overall, a standout in our community. And so I was floored that she didn't ask. And we didn't even really have that many offers. She just assumed there would be a bunch of offers. And I guess her client really did want the house, right, to do that. But I was happy for my seller, but even my seller said, that's insane. Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they just, ask about escalation clauses? Because I'd worked with that client multiple times and we always would use escalation clauses because I found most agents are open to them. They may not be cheerleaders, but they're open to them. And if I tell them I'm going to write a really strong escalation clause, I'm not going to escalate, offer asking and escalate 100,000. I'm going to maybe just use it for the last 20,000.
Yeah.
And my clients, they would be, I've talked to them, they feel good about the top offer, but they would really prefer to not have to go there if unnecessary. And I think agents just get that. It makes it human.
Yes.
And it's not just about money
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
It feels better.
Yeah.
Like to me and to people, to everybody. And I found sellers actually are not adverse to them at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They are looking at the same things, right? They're looking at like the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to get? How likely is this to get to close?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some certain insurance for them as well to be able to deliver the price that you're escalating above to let that other party know, hey, here's the floor, and they can feel really confident too.
Yeah.
In
you know,
that.
I just thought of something I never really put together. I think you might get better terms if people, when you do highest and best, I feel like people sometimes don't include some of the terms. It's not like a whole package. It's just about the price. And I think the terms are really important.
Yeah.
And just especially about like buyers being real chill in the inspection period. That's a term that we write in that doesn't really mean anything in reality, but it's kind of setting a tone. And it just, yeah, I think it's a complex thing. It's not just always about money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Rent back, time to move.
Mm-hmm.
Willing to take the cat.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
like
funny.
The
deal breaker in a deal. It was like, oh my gosh, you have to take this cat. And so I have a question for you then. So what makes a good escalation clause in your opinion?
Like I was mentioning, I think it's just for the top. I call it the top bump. It's kind of that top really uncomfortable little area that the client is like, I know I'm kind of feel like I'm overpaying and I'm willing to do it if somebody else will do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel like is a good escalation clause. And then also, obviously the other terms are so important in combination with price.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows sometimes the highest doesn't always win. Yeah. But it usually does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of a time that things got tricky using an escalation clause?
Mm-mm. I don't think they're tricky.
Yeah.
I think they're very straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing with the good escalation clause is obviously not going like 1,000 or 2 over. It's more, we're more in the range now of 5 to 10.
Yeah.
Even 15 I've seen recently. It used to be 1 or 2.
And do you think that's because the buyer is saying that's more earnest? It's not like, well, I'll win if it's easy to win, or I'll win if it's not really giving.
Yeah. I think it also came about because it was like you might be competing with cash. And that 5 or 10 for sure would probably make it worth taking the risk.
That makes a lot of sense. There's so much more cash in our market than when we started together. How did you apply your skills to keep it together when an agent has said they like using them and then they throw it out the window and don't share the other offer? Because I've heard that happening a few times. They're like, yeah, send me an escalation. And then you get a counter back and they're not actually exercising the escalation.
I think if you ask, typically that does not happen, but I did have it happen one time in my career.
So it's rare.
It's very rare.
You've done a lot of deals.
Yep. It's very rare. And it was interesting. They countered with not the highest. They countered kind of in the middle. And I got the sense that it was the listing agent not wanting to show and having a business practice that they don't feel like they should have to show competing offers, which to me doesn't make any sense. It's not their decision. But, everybody has different ways of doing business. And I respect that we all have a choice to do the business we want. But there are things that happen, downfalls to not being, I think, honest about, asking someone if they are good with an escalation clause and then not honoring it. So, but that's so rare. I do not think people have to worry about that. If you have a conversation, if you just assume they'll take an escalation clause, I would warn against that. I always have the conversation. And I don't feel like it's uncomfortable because if an agent is like, no, I don't like them, I'm like, great, no problem. It's not like I'm going to have a confrontation with them or try to challenge them. That's not the time and place to do that, I think, in negotiations.
And you've got a lot of confidence and a lot more skill. And like you said, it's just a tool. It's like, oh, okay, that's not the hex wrench for this or that's not, but we've got other things. What advice would you give an agent who's writing their first couple of deals and they're wanting to use an escalation clause for the first time?
I would just have somebody more seasoned walking them through the process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just a mentor. I mean, I think any new realtor would highly, highly benefit from not just having a managing principal broker, but having someone to mentor them, whether they are paying for it or not. I paid a mentor when I got into the business, but I know not everybody wants to do that or think, it's not for everybody. But I think just somebody that's going to walk them through the first couple times and talk through all the different, scenarios. And also, I think the most important thing is probably how to present it to your client and talk up to your client about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, the most important thing to me is the client feels that the value is there for the house, and or they will say, I know I'm overpaying for this. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But most of the time people want to know they're not getting too crazy.
And when people say they know they're overpaying, I imagine that in what you are talking about with your client is we're kind of buying into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know this is the house. We see the trends of prices escalating, and this is, likely some insurance. So like we're going to catch up, but
Yeah.
this is how we're going to get in at this point.
The other thing that I actually have come up every once in a while is a house that is like exceptional. There are no other comps that like even come close to this home.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them, we're not going to have the comps. It's like you believe in the value. You see the value. That's the best place you can be, not that you're overpaying. And I don't honestly have that many clients that really have money to like just throw around. Some people do, and it doesn't matter then. And then I'm like, okay, great. Like if you're comfortable with that. But that's like 1%, 2% of people in my experience with my clientele. So I think it's more just having them feel comfortable that it makes sense to their brain and they've thought through it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I'm sure if I say this, I'm going to have a sale fail tomorrow or this week sometime, but like, I just don't have sale fails because I take the time to talk through things with people, and mostly on the buyer side is when I would have people have sale fails when their buyers back out. So yeah, I think it's just the conversations that I think feel challenging for people, just doing it, and it might be a little messy sometimes. Like sometimes I feel like if I haven't done something in a while, and I go to do it, I'm like, God, that was a hot mess. Like I really need to work on that. Like when markets change and different things are happening, and like I remember when I had to do a price reduction conversation when the interest rates first started going up. I was like, oh my God, I'm so rusty at this. So I think just practicing and knowing that the conversations we have are really, really important and can make our like day-to-day life a lot easier or harder by our communication.
There's a lot of wisdom in that in your experience.
Yeah.
Experience is a huge benefit to our clients, and like why they should work with an experienced broker and know how to ask those right questions.
Yeah. And, I don't even know if a broker has to have that much experience to be able to have enough knowledge and it's the communication skills, I think, are what I think every human being actually we can work on every day. But for real estate, I think someone that has even 1 to 2 years experience, if they're, working on a team and getting a lot of transactional kind of experience, it's really about how you can talk to your clients and make them feel like you're giving them all the options. You are taking fiduciary duty seriously and, presenting them options. I always tell people it's like, I might have a strong opinion about some things. In fact, I'm pretty sure I will, but they're always your choices. And I'm going to give you my professional opinion, but it's always your deal.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
As we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with 3 core reminders from today's conversation that I'm taking. One, just like you said, our clients are the authority. It's not our job to decide what they should do. It's our job to give them clear, honest information so they can make the decision that's right for them. Mm-hmm. And that's where you caught me, like where I was like, oh, I have this instinct that I don't like them. And it's like, well, who cares what my preference is? What's best for the client? 2, the escalation clauses are just a tool. They're not a shortcut to winning, and they're not a substitute for sound negotiation and communication. The real foundation of effective negotiation is always going to be communication, trust, and thoughtful strategy. Heard that from you again and again. And then it's not about what we like. It's about what works.
Mm-hmm.
I said that already, but our preference doesn't matter as much as our ability to understand the landscape and build a plan that supports the best possible outcome for a client.
Exactly.
Again, it all comes down to that client. So thank you for modeling what it looks like to lead with clarity and care, Tracey. And thank you to everyone listening for doing their own work in their craft. And until next time, keep showing up, stay curious, and serve with heart.